Good evening and welcome to Pressing Issues. I'm your host, Jason Diffendahl, and today is Sunday, December 6th, 2020. I'd like to welcome one of my panelists today, Ron Deanna.
Hey, everybody.
And we'll be joined by Spencer in about half an hour when we are done talking about the timekeeping. Yes, map game. So this is one of the things I spent way too much money on Van Eaton auctions yesterday. This is one of the maps that hung in the Contemporary Resort rooms when the resort opened in 1971. It's about 4 feet by 5 feet, and it has the Persian and the Venetian hotels on it. You can see the Persian all the way in the upper right, and the Venetian, or no, that's the Asian over there. Where the
Venetian should be right behind your head.
The Venetian is behind my head. The Asian is over where the Grand Floridian is. Let me see if I can move my head. Move it this way. There's the Venetian right over my shoulder. And then the Asian over where the Grand Floridian sits now. So yeah, these are really cool maps, and pretty hard to find nowadays as they're almost 50 years old at this point. But anyway, yeah. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about timekeeping. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just noticing I've seen this map obviously tons of times, but looks like there was a third wing planned for the Contemporary too.
Yep, yeah, you see that up there too. Yes,
Well, I know they had some leveling issues with the north, with the ground on the north, and I didn't cover this in timekeeping because it was kind of just a close for refurb without any major updates. But they had to close down the garden wing at one point and re-level the floors. Almost immediately afterwards. So maybe that's why we never got that extra wing.
Yeah, could be. I mean, there's nothing over there. But yeah, there's no Space Mountain. You see, there's no Space Mountain in this map either. So, it's pretty neat. I'm pretty stoked that this is something. This is kind of one of my holy grail items. Because it's so big and there's so few of them that exist. But anyway, the chat's saying Ron goes and grabs the original blueprints from the Florida project signed by Roy Disney.
No, not quite that. I've got a lot of great digital stuff from this. I would still have to put up in the for the WIGS is I did UCF has the Bud Price archives. And Bud Price is the one of the guys who helped found the land. So it's a whole bunch of these really technical reports about Disneyland and its traffic flows, and where that's some of the cooler stuff I like. Definitely into the more, I'll say, logistical side of things sometimes.
Yeah, like engineering kind of stuff.
Well, when it comes to when we get to 1982, which will be around Christmas, I've got an item. I think I showed it to Tom once online. He's like, I've heard about these things, but we never even got one through Theme Park Connection from Epcot's opening. So I'll bring that on the air just so. It was my father-in-law's, but we have it in the house now, and it's something really cool, and I've never seen one on eBay or anything like that. So,
ooh, I've never seen it. I'm excited about that. I'm excited. All right. So, also, all of those of you who have been emailing me over the past week or two about the auditions for Pressing Issues, if you looked at the post that just went up on WDWNT.com about an hour ago, there is the sign-up form in that post for auditions. We're going to start auditions this Wednesday and go for about a week and a half. And the auditions are going to work just like the show kind of works, where I'll have a couple of you on, probably 3 people on at a time, with me, and we'll do sort of a a mock pressing issues show. I mean, we'll talk about the news of the week, and it will be recorded, but not public. But we'll record it, and we'll so I'll obviously I'll be there, but we'll record it so that Tom can take a look at it too, and then we'll make some decisions, and we'll have some people invited on. So that's how it'll work. But if you're interested, go ahead and sign up. We ask that you be available for at least two nights every month for pressing issues. So, and we'll take a handful of people. If you have, we'll try to get everybody in for an audition slot, and then we'll bring a handful of people on, and we'll see how it goes. So that's coming up. We are probably going to take a Christmas break, starting the week after next. But that will give us time to run through all the auditions and review the videos, and then we'll start with some of the new panelists in the new year. So that's the plan. But tonight we'll have Spencer join us in a little while. But Ron, why don't I turn it over to you to kick us off with timekeeping? So, but let me say before I do that, I don't know how many of you got to see the timekeeping episode that Ron and I did during the marathon show last 2 weekends ago. No, that was last weekend.
No, last weekend it was like last Saturday. Yeah.
Yeah. So last Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, Ron and I spent a good 2 hours discussing the planning and construction for Epcot Center. And that was a great segment. We had some really cool visual stuff that we showed during that segment. So if you missed that, go ahead. That should be up on YouTube. If it's not up on YouTube, I'll make sure it gets up real soon. But we've got all of the segments from the marathon show, and we're going to put them up. So that should get up there. And then also, before I forget, thanks to everyone who watched the marathon show and who donated and who bid on items in the auction. We raised a phenomenal amount of money for the cast member pantry.
You guys exceeded every expectation, yeah.
Yeah, like totally just blew away our expectations. So, we kind of raised 4 times as much money as we expected to.
Yeah,
so that's pretty amazing.
There have been jokes among staff that people are going to quit before next year's marathon just so we don't have to try. They don't have to be responsible for trying to beat that record. Because, I mean, really, guys, you have no idea how much it means to us and to the cast members out there that you all stood up when we needed it.
Yeah, for sure. And I've already started assembling some really cool auction items for next year's auction. And so that's kind of fun. And the auction, I thought the auction was a lot of fun. I mean, it took twice as long as we allotted for it, but we'll know better for next year and figure out something to do for that. But it was a lot of fun, and we had that new auction software that I think worked really well. So thanks to Stephen at Bid Spirit for getting us set up with that. So all right, Ron, go ahead. Let's hit the timekeeping for the we skipped timekeeping last week.
Right, and we skipped I think the week before.
We did. So we got a couple years to catch up on.
The articles are running a little bit behind because of last week too. I'm going to try and catch up. Hopefully this week might be a little bit longer, but we're going to try and get back on time. So we finish up our 52 and 52. But so we missed 77 we didn't cover, and 78 would have been last week. So we're covering 77 and 78 right now. And honestly, they're not the most exciting of years for what actually opens. First thing I do when I do these is I look through the guidebooks and kind of see what's changed from thing to thing. And when I'm looking through the guidebook for 78, I was just telling Jason, the only thing in the guidebook that I could find different was they changed the name of the camera shop on Main Street from the camera shop to the Main Street Camera Shop, and that's because it lost its sponsor GAF, who I have never heard of. I guess they were some sort of. They used to make these. They were the sponsors on these guides.
They made guidebooks and maps and things way
Yeah.
back in the early 70s. Yep.
So none of these have the GAF logo on them. Polaroid eventually takes that over before it becomes Kodak's thing a little later on. But so that was the only thing I saw that changed. But some of the major changes in 77, 78 to the Magic Kingdom were the parades. Obviously, Main Street Electrical Parade came in. And it existed for years at Disneyland, but it came in to Disney World, and floats that they because it had disappeared in Disneyland for a few years while they ran American Parade. But when they bring in the two new ones, they're almost identical. Main Street's or Disney World's is a little wider to accommodate the width, which is a little weird because we have tighter turns on ours, so they can't be as long, because that was one of the reasons they always said we were never going to be able to just get Paint the Night, right? Was
Paint
because
the Night,
Mac was
yeah.
too long, and that is at the Liberty Square turn. But Main Street Electrical Parade came in. Some things that were different. There was a whole Dumbo set of floats. Elliott was brand new at that point. And this is when they'd slowly been moving to the three-dimensional floats, but this is when the real three-dimensional floats really kind of were all there. And it's just it's something that happened that's just so legendary and changed the parks forever, even though it's, just a piece of entertainment. And that's kind of what really these years kind of show is that in the 76, when they did the American Parade, it was a really successful thing and brought people into the parks for that. I mean, obviously they had fireworks and some new attractions to go along with it, but the success of that parade kind of made them think we need to do more regular parades with in the 78 we get Mickey's Birthday Parade, or I forget the exact name of it. Let me see. It is Mickey's Birthday Parade, yeah. So this was for Mickey's 50th. And they had a whole weekend celebration with star-studded guests in the Magic Kingdom. But the big thing that lasted for a bit of time was that parade. And nothing stood out to me, looking at the floats. It's kind of a standard parade, but going back to that and having Elliott premiere in the new version of the Main Street Electrical Parade, and then we were talking about this when we were watching the Christmas specials during the marathon, is they were so much better about tying in new properties. And which is weird because we talk about how much they have the marketing push for these new properties. They just went all out at the time because, for a while, for 10 years, the studio changed parades every year, every other year for whatever the new animated film was. And it's amazing they don't do that anymore in the, even more synergistic way this company tries to work. So,
I think, at some point, I think the company has gotten too big and too bureaucratic to actually capitalize on the amount of synergy they could. I think, it was doable in the 70s and 80s because you had the studios and 10 movies a year or whatever, and then you had the parks and TV, and they all work together really well. But now you've got so many different movie studios, and then they, because of the way that the corporations work nowadays, you can't just say, hey, I want to make a parade float based on Kim Possible, and the studio says, okay, well, here's some artwork you can use. It doesn't work that way nowadays. There's got to be contracts and agreements, and money changes hands, and it's kind of overly complicated. There's too much bureaucracy, and so things like that just don't happen anymore.
And do you
even
think
though
a lot
you
of
think
that
it would
came
be
in?
easy.
like even though they weren't the best executives, like Walker, Miller, and obviously Walt before them, and obviously Eisner were so hands-on executives. They knew
Yeah,
everything that was going on. I mean, obviously the company's
right. And
bigger,
they
and you
could get
can't
those things done.
know everything, but Iger obviously was known for letting people do their jobs, and he focused on the strategic acquisitions and the overall picture. And he kind of thought, if you're good at your job, I'm going to let you do it for a while. And then at a certain point, he just went, "We're going to cut back. I want this. I want to kind of cap off my legacy with these things, so we're going to shift focus. So you're going to be tighter here or whatever." And I think if you're not going to be hands on, you can't be a hands tying, and that's what he switched to.
Right.
I mean, we're going to get into some of that a little later, talking about the budget cuts and uh, layoffs and stuff like that. But it's just a different outlook on the company. But those things make a difference in promoting your movies. Like
Oh, they
it's
do.
not just them losing, you know, something in the parks. It's losing a tie-in. Like how many thousand? Like you're talking at even at the studios, are talking an average of 25 to 30,000 people a day are seeing these floats and
Yeah.
going, "Huh, maybe I should see that movie
Yeah.
that just came
Like if
out."
you think about think about Soul right now, and the only reference to Soul that I've seen anywhere in the parks is outside the AMC at Disney Springs. There's that sort of photo op sign. That's it. Like there's
And is that them or
nothing
is that
else.
AMC?
Yeah, I don't even know. But there's like imagine if there was Soul characters in the cavalcades at studios. Like you don't even have to have it at all four parks, just at studios.
Or
You
they don't
could
even
put
have to
some.
come out ahead of time. Is just do day and date. Like one thing that always amazes me is like we don't think about it because the current Theater of the Stars didn't exist when it came out. They moved, but Beauty and the Beast live on stage premiered day and date with the movie. I
With the
mean,
movie. Yeah.
and now we look and say like, oh, the Frozen ride was rushed and it wasn't great, but that's because they don't think ahead. And all it takes,
Well,
it's like one department can handle synergy. Like you can have just like, hey, we're going to funnel things through here. A couple
right.
creative
And
people,
the
a
problem,
lawyer, and an executive is all you need in that department.
see, like the problem is like Eisner was willing to take risks. And after Eisner left, Iger was very different in that way. And so Eisner was willing to say, look, let's put the money into this Beauty and the Beast musical so it can debut with the film. And Iger was like, nah, we got to wait and make sure Frozen makes like $10 billion before I'll sign off on, 50 million for a layover of Maelstrom. It's just a different outlook on business, and it's an aversion to risk that is so predominant in all companies today, but especially the Walt Disney Company. I mean, there's so many people that are just there and trying to cover their asses. That's it. Like that's their whole existence. Is to if something bad happens, they have a way to blame it on someone else. That's it. It's all they
And
do all day.
they had faith in the product, and I don't think that they have faith in the product
Yeah.
because, like, even the minor, like, even a bad Disney movie, like, it wasn't a success, usually made something, and then they could only, and, like, that, if, like, things that weren't a big hit on the first go round, when they came back out 7 years later, they
Right.
were always, like, there was no Disney movie that failed over time until you get, you get to things like Atlantis. I think Black
Right.
Cauldron's
Well,
obviously the
even Black
first one.
Cauldron.
But they
Yeah.
wrote that off as saying like that's not our fault, that's their fault. Nobody tied that thing to like the team that started it wasn't the team that finished, so they're like, this is just
Yeah.
the anomaly. But and
Right.
even like
And it kind of was. I mean, Black Cauldron kind of was an anomaly when it came out. It
And maybe
was
I'd like
it
to see.
was
I'd love to see the director's cut of that. I really wish they would put that out, the like uncut version.
yeah. Yeah. But I mean, like, then you get into the golden age in the early 90s.
Atlantis. I see them talking about in the chat. I absolutely loved Atlantis when it first came out. I don't think it aged well, and I think the first half of that movie is fantastic. I love the steampunk adventure version of it. Atlantis itself and the like turnaround of the characters never did it for me. It was two films were into one, and that's actually what happened. The script was much more of that first film, and Disney wanted a princess, and the studio, and it was kind of studio interference uh, that kind of changed it.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and Treasure Planet was just
But I mean, like that,
unnecessary. Was the one I'm just
and
looking at the
and
chat like it's a fine film, but just was unnecessary, and I think came out about the same time as Titan AE, which is a better film.
yeah, which also is kind of forgettable now.
Yeah,
Um, but I think the risk tolerance of Iger was very different than Eisner, and that's gone even more so downhill.
well, Eisner's downfall was his risk tolerance, uh, and his, because of like he lost Wells, who was his sounding board, the only
Yeah,
person he ever really
yeah,
trusted. Paris and a heart attack all happened within what about a 2 or 3 year period, and it shook his
yeah.
health, it shook his mental health, it shook his company's health, and he just pulled back, and the company was a different man and the or different
Well, I mean,
entity.
and the risk tolerance. I mean, Paris. Paris was the risky move that failed.
And it
That
was his
absolutely
choice,
was.
and it was
Yeah,
his one. He was saying we need more hotels, and
yeah,
if they had phased those hotels, it would have been a success. And one of the things people always forget about Paris is Disneyland Paris was losing money. The Disney company was not really always losing money because of the licensing deal that they had with them. Because it wasn't a
right. They
wholly
were
owned
financially protected.
subsidiary.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
they were always making money because they had to license Peter Pan from them. They had to license all this from them. So there was always some money coming back to the Disney company. It's just the it was screwing those European shareholders basically,
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean,
and
it
that's
didn't
why
look good on the company.
yeah, and that's why
I mean,
now
the
that they have
problem wasn't.
full control, they're willing
Go
to
ahead.
put more money into it because they're like, well, now it actually matters what the park looks like and what it does.
Right.
We can't just
Yeah.
ride on something.
Like back then, the problem was that any Disney park that opened and had the such low attendance just looked bad for the Walt Disney Company regardless. I mean, the same thing would have happened in Tokyo. If Tokyo Disneyland opened with a very low attendance, that would have looked terrible for the Walt Disney Company, even though they owned less of Tokyo than they did Paris.
Yeah.
It was just the image. But yeah, somebody in the chat said something about the gas crisis in 77, 78.
It didn't hit like 73, 74. It didn't alter the company's plans quite as much. Uh, so it didn't have that same impact. I think we're going to see a little bit of Middle East relations breaking down with particularly with Iran around this time is why when we're going to get to we're looking at the Epcot plans from here. The UAE was one of the announced countries. It wasn't like just we're talking anymore. Like in like 76, 77, they were discussing countries they were talking to. The 78, at that point, they're laying out, here's 10 pavilions that are going in a World Showcase, and here's a breakdown of what's in them. And the UAE was there, as was Israel at the time, and sponsors were lined up for these things. All of that was there, but I think the UAE and Israel were both just like political pullbacks. For like Israel was just promised and promised. Israel was also not like something that had a big attraction attached to it. It had a live theater, like just supposed to be musicians. The annual report of '78 talks about UAE having a magic carpet ride, talking about the Arabic world's, how it kind of saved a lot of the Roman era stuff in the Middle Ages. We talk about that on Spaceship Earth, or at least some of the versions did. That the scientific and artistic, contributions of the Arabic world was going to be focused there, and that wasn't Morocco. Morocco was still always just the Kingdom of Morocco's like the king's little pet project. It seemed like the entertainment that was scheduled for there was basically what we got with Marrakesh. And so we're most of these timekeeping articles was really focused on the Epcot stuff because that's where the company was focused. We see some other changes like Discovery Island name change came in '78 very quickly, and that was kind of more they wanted to focus on the zoological aspect. They don't get the zoological certification for a couple of years still. I did not know the name change, and I read this somewhere. This isn't an official thing, but this was a quote from somebody in the company on the page, so I do trust it. The name change was a cast contest with a $50 prize. So when Discovery, yeah. $50 in 1977 money, it's a little better, but
yeah. Speaking of $50, here's Spencer. I owe Spencer $50.
How do you wait?
We can't
What?
hear you. There we go.
How do you owe me
I owe you
$50?
money. You were buying me stuff.
I put it on the.
Okay.
So you owe the company $50.
Good.
Yeah.
Yes.
No,
I was subtracted from my paycheck. But welcome, Spencer. Everybody loves Spencer.
Just getting kind of back into the '82 Epcot stuff, and Japan was. Since you're here, we're talking about Japan was there, listed with an attraction that was entitled. I want to get this right. Winds of Change, which was the Carousel Theater show, which obviously became Meet the World.
Okay, I was waiting for you to say Meet the World.
Oh yeah, Meet the World.
I wish that
certain terms.
Yeah, I wish that I had known about this because I would have put on an Epcot shirt instead of this.
We're not going to be on this for too long, but Meet the World was supposed to be there, and I think we talked about this on a little bit, and I've heard a few places talk about it. I want to look into some sort of first-person confirmation from not just like Jim Hill or Jim Cork is talking about it, which I think I've heard both of them, which together that's usually reliable to me. But that there's the reason we never got it is they misbuilt the building, the show building.
Yeah.
So they couldn't get the carousel to work. It was like a few inches too short for the carousel to go in.
Small,
so that's why it was delayed and then just never happened.
Yeah, unfortunately.
That's what I've heard too. I could go on about how much I love Meet the World, honestly. I love the song. It's one of those Sherman Brothers songs that I feel like is super underappreciated because the ride never came to the U.S.
And I think it was going to be a slightly different version because I've never seen the show and I've never seen a video of it because I don't think there's much of a point of watching a video of a ride that's dialogue heavy in Japanese.
So when we did watch-alongs for WDWNT Live, we found that Martin's tribute to Meet the World had the English dialogue that they'd recorded for Epcot as part of it. Originally, when the ride opened here, you could sit in the back row of the theater and put on headphones and listen to the English track for Meet the World.
Which I'm surprised they don't do for more things, especially now that they can run that with a location-based app on a phone. like allow people to like. I think we're gonna. I think within the next 5 to 10 years, we're probably going to see that, particularly at World, where we have so many international visitors who speak different
Yeah.
languages. They're going to start doing that because you don't have to provide any hardware; you just run it through the app. But
Well, even
with
if
the
you
Meet the World,
do, there's a system here for Tiki Room where they give you this little device thing, and I guess it uses IR signals to show subtitles for the show. Theoretically, you could also use IR signals to trigger certain tracks on this device, which would ensure that like people don't pirate the audio or whatever, because I'm sure that would be a concern if you did it on the phone. Uh, so, like, if you use that device, you could use IR to trigger these tracks or something. And you know, they have a lot of these recorded in French and in Japanese and now in Mandarin and Cantonese. So I would imagine like doing these other versions of the show in other languages like Portuguese or something for popular tourists wouldn't be that difficult.
I mean, we could always talk to Jessica about how they dub things in different languages. That's something she used to do. But with Meet the World, the other thing I always heard was one of the reasons they had to rewrite one of the scenes because this is something I've heard, as I said, I've never seen, was when they get to the World War II, basically it fades to black and they basically say the equivalent of like, something bad happened. Like they kind of just gloss over it. And they're like, that's not going to fly in America. Is going to, particularly in that age group where it's that age group is who fought in the war are bringing their kids or their grandkids really to Epcot when it opens. I know my grandfather would have been like, excuse me.
I've heard that too. That's how it is in the Japanese version. They kind of just gloss over the but those were the bad times, and so we're going to move on now. And you know, I kind of understand not wanting to talk about it, considering that this is a family theme park, and going into the atrocities of what happened in World War II in Japan. You know, the bombing or the horrible things that the Japanese soldiers did. You know, that's not something you probably want to approach in a theme park.
Right.
So I kind of understand like what the issue was there a little bit. Like, imagine if they'd done the same thing in Germany, a German history thing. Like, how would you gloss over Nazi Germany? There's got to be a solution, you know.
Right, and while we're on that,
I guess they just didn't find one.
At this point, they talked about all the attractions that were going in, and we all know the Rhine River Cruise, but it wasn't always just the Rhine. They were supposed to go over multiple rivers. So all the German rivers, there's a list of them on the annual report, which I don't have in front of me right now. But so that was there, but it was not just the Rhine River. And then they had things like France didn't have a film, but it had like 2 levels of shops because French perfumes and all the Cartier was a sponsor and all these other things there were going to be. They wanted to have everything French as a shop, so there was no film, but there was a film going into the UK. So things did switch around a little bit there, and we never got anything in the UK, and at this point, never will. Looks like. France was always supposed to have the Circle Vision film because I think some people know this is footage that was in the 82 O Canada and the 05? The Martin Short O Canada. Some of that dated back to the 1967 Montreal Expo, where there was a Circle Vision film in the Canada Pavilion. So think about how dated, right. 2 years ago, it was already 50 years old footage in there. So yeah, they needed. So definitely, Far and Wide was something that was needed, even if it's not the best. I haven't seen it yet, and I'm not watching a video of it till I get there because I want to see it live. But yeah, that was part of the expo. So things were there. Italy never mentioned a ride. Some of the concept art is going to be up in. I don't think it's published yet this week's Timekeeping on 78. Germany and Italy looked almost exactly like they do, even if the positions were swapped. American Adventure was still at the front of World Showcase. Technically, they listed as part of Future World. It would kind of be where that walkway is that would be between Odyssey and Imagination. And I was thinking about this today, Jason. I wonder if that was moved after the geological surveys, because Odyssey was pushed back and that lake was
Oh
put there
yeah,
because of the geological surveys.
yeah.
I wonder if that's why American Adventure got moved to the
That
back rather than
could
just
be.
having people, having to walk back to
Have
it.
to funnel through. Yeah,
Yeah,
that I never thought of. I never thought of that, but I bet that is definitely a possibility.
yeah.
Jason, could you please fix this? It's only
You just
funny when
have
it's
to
a
move
picture in the
over.
studio.
You just have to move over a little bit, Spencer. Then it'll be fixed.
Perfect.
It's only funny when it's a picture in the studio.
No, the chat liked it. The chat liked it.
But the building itself wasn't the grand Georgian mansion we know now. It kind of looked like a combination between Space Mountain and Cirque du Soleil. It was a cylindrical building with like a tent
Yeah.
type top, but with the kind of Space Mountain pylons. I don't really know or trusses or buttresses that run through the concrete. Like they're not really, but like
Yeah, yeah. We looked at it. We have a picture of it on the timekeeping segment from last weekend.
and it'll be up on the article
Spencer
as
left it
well.
together.
Spencer is
Very.
trying to fix a power issue with his computer where it does not want to charge, and if it doesn't charge, then he will have to leave because his battery is at 6% right now.
Okay.
Get in, Spencer.
So I'm trying to think of anything else. Empress Lily opened in '77. I definitely have very both fond and traumatic memories of that. Um, I was about 6 or so, and it was kind of a fancier. Like when it opened here, there were 3 restaurants and 3 lounges. 2 of them were just kind of like outdoor bars. One of them was one of the other lounges was a like jazz lounge, but there was like a seafood place, a steak place, and like a not quite Victorian Albert's, but close kind of place. So there were the different things there. But I remember in the '80s, it was obviously a little different, and I think it might have been the character breakfast that they did there. I can't quite remember because there's some head trauma coming up in the story where we're eating breakfast there, and they served all the stuff with the metal cloches. And as the waiter's walking through, he just drops the entire tray of metal cloches right on my head.
Oh boy!
Right in front of my 6'2" Sicilian grandfather.
Oh boy!
Oh boy.
It's very lucky the guy got out of there alive. But I think we ended up getting that was one of those. Okay, so you're staying at the Contemporary? Yeah, that's on us for the trip, kind of thing.
Wow! Wow!
But I remember
Back when there was
places
proper customer
very
service.
clearly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So when I was, I guess it was last Thursday. Last Thursday we had breakfast at the Wave, and we had a waiter who we've had many times before. Like we know him; he's a great waiter. Oh, hey, look, Dave Smith is here.
Hey,
Sorry to jump in on you.
Hey,
Oh,
welcome.
that's
it's
great.
been a minute.
Welcome, Dave. Yeah, we're just finishing up the timekeeping, and I'm telling a story about what happened to me at the Wave last weekend. So we have a waiter that we've had many times before, and he's a great waiter. And he's bringing us pog juice, and he's putting one down on the table, and it just slips out of his hand. Like he didn't do anything wrong. It was just kind of slippery, and it slipped out of his hand and fell over, and it spilled like on the left side of my shirt and pants and Caitlin's leg a little bit, and he felt so bad. He felt horrendously bad, and like he quick ran and brought all these towels, and he went to the bar and got a towel with club soda so that it wouldn't stain my shirt, and he felt terrible, and it was an accident, and I'm not gonna get mad at the guy for something that was just an accident. So I'm like, it's fine, don't worry about it. And then we're finishing breakfast, and then the manager comes over. And the manager's this guy, like with a British accent, and he's like, I heard there was an accident here. I'm like, oh, there was? And he's like, wasn't something spilled? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, if there's anything we need to do, let me know. And I'm like, it's fine. It wasn't his fault. It was just completely an accident. So it was nice that the manager came over. And I mean, we could have said like, I need new clothes, but it was not a big deal. Like it was dry by the time we were leaving anyway. So, but it was just that's like the craziest thing that's happened to me at a restaurant. But your story beats that by far. Mine is just more recent. But
yeah, I was definitely very young. None of my sisters were alive yet. I remember, so it was at most I was 5.5 when it happened. But I remember the thing coming down on me, and not much else from that trip. Not that caused that. It's just, when you're 5, you don't remember every detail. I think that might have been the same trip where my grandfather tried to take me to Top of the World back in the day when it was the big stage show and all that. And I threw an absolute hissy fit. I don't want to go in. I don't want to be in the fancy clothes. I'm doing the kid thing in the lobby, like my daughter does already now. And he tried to bribe me to go in. He's like, "You wanted that 4-foot Figment doll, right? Well, if you go in, I'll get it for you tomorrow." And I still refuse to go. Not that I probably would still have that by now, but I kind of wish I did.
Fun stuff. All right. What else is that? Do we cover everything in timekeeping, Ron? Is that pretty much?
Yeah. I mean, it's really the Epcot stuff, which we covered a lot. 78. We got the first real expansion at the Poly with Oahu coming in, and along with that, we lost the putting green, but got the Eastern Pool, Tangaroa Terrace, the snack aisle, and Moana Mickey's Fun Hut, which was their new arcade. So, I mean, Tangaroa Terrace is, I know a lot of people have a lot of love for it. I don't remember ever eating there. So my parents really prefer the Contemporary to the Poly back in the day, so...
Yeah, my grandparents preferred the Poly to the Contemporary. We stayed at the Contemporary once, and then every year after that it was the Polynesian, so... Oh, well.
But I know a lot of people had a lot of fond memories, and everybody says, bring that back, but I don't know it. But I know that was a big thing. And at the same time, as we said, that Shooting Arcade went into the Fiesta Fun Center. I've got some photos that some people said came from, saw them in a few places, that came from an auction on eBay a few years ago. That someone was selling an identical one. My understanding is a company that made, it wasn't WDI that made the shooting gallery there. It came from a third party that may have been owned.
There
by
was
WDI?
a company, yes.
That
it was
Disney
owned by
owned.
Disney.
That made it. So
Disney owned a company that made shooting galleries. Yes, I forget what it's called. I think it began with an M.
Yeah, like McKesson. I know it's
exactly
like
right.
McKesson or something. So they were the ones who put it in. So the exact setup was other places. About, I don't remember the year, like 5 to 10 years ago, it came up on eBay for like $90,000 for the whole setup.
Wow.
And if you remember this, it was the most messed up set of sets in one shooting arcade, because you have like the old West bar, You have like a pirate treasure area. You have like a haunted forest, and then a witch's dungeon. Like all met thrown together. But I mean, I loved this shooting arcade. I used to, spend a lot of time there when my parents would go back to the midday and go to the pool. Um, and yeah, that was this year as well. So the only other thing that happened in '78, the Sun Bank building over by Disney Springs opened.
Yep.
That took the post office out of uh, the marketplace and moved over there as well. So there's definitely changes to the marketplace. I have tried my hardest to find maps and lists of all the shops over the years there, and it just has not materialized. I know there were
I
things like
had
the
some.
pottery. Yeah, I've had a few
Um,
that were they were the art shops, but I mean, some of them were just like it was a normal barber shop or it was a normal grocery store. So like they're not that interesting that anybody seemed to really
yeah.
lock it
Remember or
down.
get any pictures or anything? Yeah.
Yeah.
I have. Yeah. Like I remember. I've got a couple things. I think they're like the Walt Disney World News magazines, like the magazines they would give you when you check in at the resort. And like the last page of a lot of those has a map of uh, the village marketplace and the stores. I'll have to look around and see if I have any more of those. But I know I had it on a couple. I'll dig
Yeah,
it
I think I
out.
just want to like because these were what the guidebooks were in the late
Yeah.
'70s, um, and like this is the entire section, and this is not just the Magic Kingdom guidebook. This was the Magic Kingdom guidebook, and then info for the rest of the property.
Right. The
So
rest of
this
the resort.
entire thing is springs right there. Uh, there's the Empress Lily for those who obviously know
Yep.
it now at Paddlefish and Fulton's. Here's one of the original tree houses.
Yep.
I got to get a book scanner and get all these things up, but uh, my goal right now is to try and get a complete collection. May not. They did these quarterly. They didn't print them like weekly like they do now.
Yeah.
Um, they were printed quarterly. I'm trying to get at least one from every year as part of this project. Uh, they're really cool. I've got a few more obviously in the future coming down the way, and I finally found someone from the early '70s that I could start collecting those because it was really hard to find good ones. 72, 73, 74, 71. I couldn't find any. Like even the maps that said they were from '71, I'm looking at like, no, that's definitely not '71.
Yeah. Yeah. This map is 71.
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, the Asian hotels was still in the plans up to '74. Um, looks like they're planning Treasure Island already, which would have been '74.
Yeah. There's a pirate ship there.
Well,
Yep.
yeah, I mean,
For
they
sure.
called it Blackbeard's Island before that, even though they didn't do anything with it. I think it was used for filming
Yeah.
a couple things. Um, the Persian and the Mediterranean. Wasn't there one more plan somewhere? Somewhere else. I'm trying to remember. I don't know if it ever.
There was a there was a Persian. I don't know
The
where it was
Persian's above your
located.
head, and the Mediterranean. But I think the
Oh yeah.
Mediterranean was also called the Venetian sometimes. So maybe that's what I'm thinking. That those were they kind of
Well, that's over
they were
here. The Venetian,
right. That's the place where they keep sinking pylons every time they try and build something.
and they keep sinking. Yes.
And every few years, it's like, oh, let's test this new foundation technology. Straight down. I mean, Florida is a lot of mud and sinkholes, so that's going to happen. Is Spencer coming back? Has anybody heard from him?
I don't know. He's sort of frozen. I'm just leaving him there.
Yeah.
He might pop
The
back
chat
on. I
requested you
guess
put
if
the
he can
frame back
figure.
over him.
I just thought he was being
Yeah, we
very
could do that.
attentive.
Um, he doesn't. His computer doesn't like to charge. Apparently, so
Hi, I'm Spencer.
there we go. we'll put him there as like in memoriam. But all right, so let's talk about some pressing issues of today and yesterday, maybe in the day before or whatever. There's a couple things that Ron, if you want to go, that's fine.
If Spencer comes back, I'll head out. But it's always good to have at least 3 voices on.
Fair enough. That's great. If I think one of the things that I want to talk about tonight that sort of came into my mind when Tom tweeted from studios yesterday and today, Rise of the Resistance on its first birthday didn't start loading guests until 4:00 in the afternoon, and today it looked like one of the lifts was broken, so they were only sending one vehicle through instead of in pairs. So it looks to me, and this is speculation on my part, but it looks to me, and it wouldn't surprise me, and I don't think it would really surprise anybody, that a lot of the cast member furloughs and layoffs and terminations. It wouldn't surprise me that there were some of those in the maintenance department. And Rise of the Resistance hasn't had a good day like almost ever. There are a sporadic few here or there where it actually doesn't break down on any given day. But it certainly looks like now. And essentially since the parks reopened in July, it looks like it's worse. It's definitely worse than it was at the beginning of this year. And so I think it looks like maintenance budgets or maintenance personnel are getting hit with a lot of these cuts. And it's now beginning to become apparent, and it's now beginning to become an operational problem. Carousel of Progress was broken and evac'd the other day.
You act like that one's new, though. That's been continuous for years.
I mean, there's problems with it, but I don't think it gets evac'd that often. Right, like Carousel has problems, but it doesn't get evac'd.
Well, usually because
Everest?
You can't. I'll say Carousel because the cast members don't know there's a problem till people are on it, and they'll just stop loading and let people finish.
Yeah, that's true. But Everest today, I mean, go ahead, David.
I'm just going to ask, your opinion on this, because if Rise is only a year old, can we really call it maintenance issues? I mean, it shouldn't. I know there's day-to-day maintenance that has to happen, but aren't what we're encountering now more just lack of quality control in the initial design and development? And
hey, Spencer's back.
There's Spencer.
Let's get rid of the frame.
We had your in memoriam up.
All right.
Oh.
All right. Well, Ron, now that Spencer's back, you can head out.
All right.
And
have a good night,
I'll get
people.
rid of Spencer's picture frame. Good night, Ron.
Thanks, Ron.
Sorry, Ron. Thanks, Ron. I had to restart my computer like 5 times for it to finally recognize that even though there was not a cable plugged in, that does not mean it should still say it's charging. So thank you, Apple, for that.
Oh, jeez. Yay for Apple.
Yay.
Yeah, David, that's a good question. That's a good point. I think it's tough to say. I mean, certainly, the first month or two of operation, you can say, oh, well, they rushed it to open it and they didn't get a chance to fix everything. And I think that was accurate. But then, January, February, right before the parks closed, I mean, they were hitting boarding groups in the hundreds on a pretty decent basis. I mean, it had issues, and it broke down and had to get evac'd. But there were a couple days where they hit boarding groups well into the hundreds. And so, I think that was sort of the best little period of its existence. But since July, my guess is that there hasn't been the same level of daily maintenance that there was in January and February and March. Now, an issue like one of the lifts breaking, yeah, that's not routine maintenance related. That's it's either one of two things. It's either bad equipment from the get go, cheap sourcing of equipment or parts, or else it's just a lack of checking everything every day. Like if there's a loose bolt, like it depends what caused it, right? If there's a loose bolt that caused the lift to somehow break, that could have been found. Excuse me. That could have been found, but it didn't. But if that was the problem, and the daily walkthrough or whatever that is supposed to check on things like that just hasn't been done because lack of personnel or lack of budget, then that's completely their fault. If it was just something fails under, honestly, it's like right after the 1-year warranty would expire that these things broken. So it may be just manufacturing or whatever, and I'm sure this is all third party stuff. So it could be that, but but something like Everest,
right? That is definitely maintenance related, and same with like you mentioned, Clear Solid Progress, right? But even with Rise, I mean, I think I'm most concerned that the type of issues we're saying, at least it seems to me, from my perception, not being on the inside, that it's mostly physical type breakdowns. I understand this is an extremely complex attraction that probably has hundreds of thousands of lines of code that are running it, but it doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of software issues with it, unless I'm reading that wrong.
I mean, certainly the lift breaking is a hardware issue. I think the R5 units that were breaking, in the vehicles, that's more than likely a hardware issue. I think when the Kylo animatronic broke and, was in B mode for a while, that's clearly hardware, right? I mean, like, it can't be software if it works for 6 months and then all of a sudden one day doesn't work.
Right.
And yeah,
right.
I think that's what we're seeing. I think you're right. I think, as bad as Disney software people are, my guess is that a lot of this software was written by, probably somebody in Imagineering, which I think does a better job than like the people that write MDX software or whatever. So the fact that the ride can run and can run reliably for a day does sort of point to the fact that it's not a software issue. I mean, maybe there's glitches. Certainly lightning striking the building can't be good for the computers. But still, either the computer works or it doesn't. And if you reboot it and it doesn't work, you replace parts or whatever. But yeah, I think it does seem like a fair amount of the problems are certainly hardware related. And for that to be the case, I still think of Honey Hunt and the fact that Honey Hunt's 20 years old. It uses whether Honey Hunt is older trackless technology or not, it's so similar that they could have used a carbon copy of the Honey Hunt hardware. They absolutely could have. There's no reason that they couldn't just make an exact duplicate of the Honey Hunt hardware and use it. The only difference is the lifts and the locking mechanism where they lock into place. Okay. But still, the fact that Honey Hunt runs and has been running without serious problems for 20 years, and then they use a very, very similar technology, and it doesn't work in Rise. I mean, it works in Runaway Railway. The problems with Runaway Railway have nothing to do with the ride vehicles. It has to do with the storyline. But the ride vehicles in Runaway Railway seem to work just fine too, and they're the same sort of ride vehicle, trackless, same capacity, same general size, and they seem to work fine too. So it's not the trackless ride vehicles. It seems like the trackless ride vehicle technology is fine. It's everything else that's a problem. Like the big, this happened to me last week, and I know it's been happening to Tom. The part where you drive in front of the three big guns, and the guns are supposed to move. Only one of the three of them moves now. The very first one in the room moves. The second two just stay still and shoot. They don't move into your path. That clearly has nothing to do with the ride vehicle, right? Whether that's a software or hardware issue, I don't know. But the fact that it used to work and now it doesn't sort of points at a hardware issue more than a software issue. So yeah, I think you're probably exactly right in terms of this is all either rushed or cheap or both. And, things weren't well tested or well spec'd out before they were purchased, or they bought cheap stuff and hoped it would work, and it's turning out that it just can't handle the stress of the daily operation. And, I mean, you look at it now, imagine if studios opened at 8 a.m. and had to run till 10 p.m. I mean, it's running 2/3 of a regular day right now, and it can't even handle it. Imagine what it would be if it was running a full regular park day, or with extra magic hours or whatever.
So in defense of larger trackless ride vehicles that do more than what Honey Hunt or Runaway Railway do, Beauty and the Beast has broken almost every day since it opened. They have to evac it just about every day. And that's not even as complicated a ride as Rise of the Resistance. It could just be whatever technology they're using for these new next generation trackless rides like Rise and Beauty and the Beast. Something in them isn't working right, and just about every day they have to close it and evac it and issue apologies to guests and multi-experiences.
Right, but I mean, here's my argument. Why use this technology if it's not reliable? You have 20-year-old technology that is reliable. Why do they have to go with this cutting-edge stuff?
Maybe it isn't capable of handling the stuff that they want to do. Honey Hunt, the vehicles don't tilt. They do in Beauty and the Beast. In Rise of the Resistance, I don't know what they do, but it's certainly more advanced, I'm sure, than what goes on in Runaway Railway or in Honey Hunt.
I think what I would be interested in knowing, Spencer, I don't expect you to know this, but I'm curious if when they close Beauty and the Beast, is it because there is a scene element that is out that they don't want guests to see? And so they're evacuating, they're closing, they're working on that, and then reopening.
Because that happens in Tokyo. It doesn't happen anywhere else. That's right.
Right. Whereas with Rise, not only is it closed for a good period of time, but when they're running it, they also have multiple show elements that are malfunctioning or not working properly that they're still running.
Well, no, that doesn't happen here. That doesn't happen here. There's just in general, that's just not their principle for maintenance. The Japanese public expects more, so they have to deliver. Especially for the fact that they have to enter a 30% chance of winning the lottery to ride the ride in the first place.
Exactly.
No, when they close the ride, it's usually because something breaks with the trackless vehicles themselves, I think. Something goes wrong there, or maybe a door malfunctions or something. I don't think it's a show element thing at all. They don't evac for a show element.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah, that's true. They wouldn't evac for a show element. They would just stop loading people.
Right, and run everybody else.
They would finish and maybe take a couple extra minutes to fix it, or it would just, if it's something minor, then they just, like I've seen the Beauty and the Beast dancing in the finale running in B mode before. They just would fix it the next day.
Yeah, or over
Right. So
100.
that's kind of my
I
point. Is it's hard to compare the Beauty and the Beast shutdowns to the Rise shutdowns and the errors, just because
well,
Florida is
the
more willing
closest
to
thing I
run
can
with those.
well, the closest thing I can come up with is Beauty and the Beast because it's the only attraction here that it's the only other attraction running on this next gen trackless technology that they seem to be using. Runaway Railway seems to be using a lot of the same stuff as Mystic Manor and
I
Pooh's
think
Honey
Mystic
Hunt.
Manor and Runaway Railway are more based on Honey Hunt because the vehicles don't tilt.
Yeah, they don't do anything special, but there's special stuff in Rise of the Resistance and in Beauty and the Beast. So, what in Rise there's a whole animatronic at the front of every ride vehicle, isn't there?
Yes.
I mean,
They've got
there's a droid
new
that
stuff that
goes
they're
up and
doing.
down and spins.
Not sure you could call it a full
I think
animatronic.
it's
Yeah.
Anyway, the point is, Rise and Beauty, they're using this new technology that's clearly unreliable. And I mean, we have
well,
rides that are
it's
just
either not ready or
there's plenty of attractions that we love that are unreliable. Test Track, I know a lot of people love Test Track. It breaks every day. Radiator Springs Racers uses the same technology. It breaks all the time too, from what I understand. Journey to the Center of the Earth goes down every day. The reliability of the technology does not dismiss the merits of the attraction.
I don't think we ever dismiss the merits of the attraction. I think what we're saying is that they probably need to find more reliable technology. Now, Test Track,
Well, what do you
granted, was
expect them to do? Do
technology
you
that
expect
Walt
them to just
Disney Imagineering
tear out?
developed.
Do you expect them to just tear out the entire ride and and try and fix it all over again?
I mean, Great Movie Ride was trackless and it had no problems. Honey Hunt has no problems. Mystic Manor has no problems. I mean, if the choice is you can have a vehicle that tilts but it goes down every day, or you have a vehicle that doesn't tilt but it works reliably, I would take the latter. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer if you're in park operations. I don't need my vehicle to tilt if it means it's unreliable.
But the fact that it's built on this technology is probably going to mean that if it doesn't tilt, it doesn't work at all.
Well, no, I'm saying they could take an older generation technology that works reliably. They could use Honey Hunt or Mystic Manor trackless technology that doesn't break. Like they're pushing the cutting edge, but the problem is that they're pushing it too far, and it's not only is it causing problems as far as maintenance and upkeep, it's causing problems as far as the guests are mad because they can't ride it. I'd rather have a ride that works and people can ride it rather than one that is like a next step up in technology but only works half the time.
Well, here's the thing. You don't find out whether the technology is going to be reliable in a real-world situation or not until you put it in a real-world situation. There's no way that they could have figured out that putting this under... They could not have figured this out in any way, putting it under duress in testing or whatever, to know that it would be this unreliable when they were still developing the attraction.
And that's why they shouldn't build 3 rides simultaneously. There's no way they should build 3 rides simultaneously using a new technology that's not completely run through the paces and guaranteed to work. There's no reason to do that. There's no reason to build 3 rides that on that same technology that hasn't been proven in a theme park setting.
I think an engineer is going to disagree with you, Spencer. I mean, they can do proper testing. They can do the proper amount of stress testing of these attractions to figure out if they will work in the real world. Yeah, that's where the take is. I mean, that's why there's a constant pull between engineering and budget and finance, is because the engineers would like to test this for 2 years before they release it. That's not reasonable. but maybe they pushed these things out a little too fast, so they didn't have the opportunity to test them. Because and from
Can
to
they
come
really
from
simulate? Can they really simulate these real-world conditions of putting all of these ride systems together at once over a long period of time and figure out whether it's going to be reliable or not? I don't think they can.
That's what integration testing is, though. That's the whole point of that phase of testing, is to bring them all together and run them for an extended period of time to see what issues you're going to hit. Now,
Right, you run it for 48 hours and see how long it lasts.
and if you take the right measurements, you can see what the wear and tear is during that 48 hours, and you can then extrapolate that out to see, all right, here's what my expected failures are for each component of this attraction. And then you can plan ahead for those, and that's how you base your maintenance schedule for the attraction. And I'm sure they've done something similar, but it definitely seems like there's stuff breaking well before it's expected to.
Well, part of that's probably also just because they're not doing the basic maintenance in the first place unless they have to.
Yeah. Well,
They
that's
do
kinda
the bare
what-
minimum
that's
to
kinda
keep
what
the
I was
ride
getting
running.
at.
Right.
Right? Like, there was no problems with Everest running. But the fact that it goes down for so long that they have to put out an alert on My Disney Experience to tell people and apologize, that's a serious problem. That's something is going on there, and the fact that Everest ran forever without any significant problems either means they didn't do routine maintenance and it caught up to them, or they just don't have the spare parts they need to fix it. I mean, that's the problem with Hagrid's. There was something that happened with Hagrid's a couple months ago, and it was closed for a week. And it wasn't because they couldn't find the problem. It's because they didn't have a spare part. Now, on the other hand, when Splash Mountain goes down every other day, it's usually because a motor burns out, and it happens often enough that they keep plenty of those motors on hand to fix, and it's back up within a couple hours. So, if that's the question, I think Hagrid's was certainly a part supply issue. My guess is that Everest may very well be the same thing, that they need a part and they just don't have it. Now, I mean, you're running a multi-billion-dollar company whose only source of income right now, besides a stupid streaming service, is the parks that are open. You damn well better not have to shut down a ride for a week just waiting for a spare part. That's ludicrous.
It's hard to compare Hagrid's to Splash Mountain. Hagrid's has been open for
Why?
what, a year and a half? Hagrid's has only been open for a year and a half. They've only just started to figure out where their big flaws are going to be.
It doesn't mean they shouldn't have spare parts available.
They should have spare
Like
parts,
they
but
could
they
buy,
don't.
they could buy one of every part.
Let's say that they'd already just replaced one part and it failed unexpectedly much faster than they expected it to. That could be your problem right there. With Splash, they know a motor's going to burn out, every other day or something, and they keep 30 of them backstage because they've been going through this for 30 years.
I mean, Hagrid's didn't have this problem until recently, so whatever part that was lasted 3/4 of a year before it broke.
Well, maybe that part was rated to last 2 years, and then it just broke earlier than they thought, so they hadn't had it ordered yet.
But what I'm saying is all these things that you're saying are avoidable.
They're avoidable, sure.
With enough intelligence and pre-planning and money, they're all avoidable problems.
It's a financial question of how much are you willing to invest to keep that uptime. And I don't think any of us are saying or suggesting that there should be 99% uptime for theme park attractions. But I think we can all agree that it should probably be better than 50%, which is around what Rise is running right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It should be, absolutely. But now that it's built and they've figured out that this technology is unreliable, what's the solution? Do you close this massive, basically the flagship attraction of the resort for months or even
I
years to
mean,
entirely
honestly,
redo
they
the
had 3
technology?
months to
Or
do it. They had 3 months where it was closed and they could have done it, and they chose to do nothing.
they didn't. I will defend Disney here. They didn't know how long they were going to be closed because they kept dragging it out like 2 weeks and then another 2 weeks and then another 2 weeks.
I know. They still could have gotten to work on it. They could be working
Oh,
on it at Disneyland right now. It's the same ride system. They could be running Disneyland every day, seeing what breaks, figuring out how to fix it, and then transfer that knowledge to studios. They could be doing that. They're not. They could be.
Good point,
Would be a
actually.
great use of resources and time to fix the ride, to have a version of the ride that doesn't have to use, that doesn't have to be open for guests, that they could just play with and tweak every day for months on end. They could be doing it.
That's
They're
actually
not.
a really good point. I agree with you on that one. That is a good point. Uh, maybe the staff or the
They're too
budget just
cheap to
isn't
do it.
there. But yeah.
They're too cheap to do it. Yes, that's absolutely the case. I think, and so the problem that I was going to get to, uh, the problem I think that this company is facing, and I think the problem that the company will continue to face until leadership is changed, is that, 10, 20 years ago, Walt Disney World was a place that wanted to impress the guests so that they would return. Right? You want to give a superior product so that people, your guests, are amazed and are immediately want to return. I think what Walt Disney World has turned into right now is a place that says, let's milk the people for all that we can, and I don't give a shit if they return. It's an incredibly short-sighted business perspective, but it really seems to me that's what they're doing. Because if they were doing anything other than that, then there's a heck of a lot of stuff going on right now that shouldn't be happening. But it really seems to me that all they're out for is to get money from the people that are going, and they don't care what kind of experience those people get, and therefore they don't care if they come back or not. They just want the money right now, and that's all they care about.
that's a great way to say
Now,
it,
Spencer,
Jason.
Yeah.
I would love for you to come up with a way to refute what I said, but I'm pretty confident that you can't.
I mean, with what you just said, I agree. We've talked about this at length multiple times over the past few months.
Yeah.
We've spent the hello.
We're
Hello.
here.
Spencer's not.
Oh,
Oh,
lose you,
now
Spencer.
he's frozen. No,
There we go.
there. He is.
He's still moving.
What happened? I had to refresh. I don't
So,
talked about this at length multiple times over the past few months. I don't have any reason to disagree with you. That's the direction that they're going.
so
That's how
Rebecca in the chat says people are coming anyway. They don't really have high expectations to begin with now, which is right. People are coming. There's a lot of people that aren't coming right now. I mean, there's enough people that are coming to pretty much fill up the capacity as it is right now. The problem is that if those people who are coming and spending the same price for a day ticket as you did in January, and they're getting such a crappy experience, they're not going to come back. They're not. I mean, I've complained that management has been short-sighted in the past. This is the worst that it's been that I've ever seen it. Is
worse than
absolutely
the
the worst
Pressler
that it's been.
years.
I mean, that was California. I think what you're seeing in Walt Disney World is almost like the equivalent of the Pressler years in California. But even then, I mean, they budget cut, but guest service and guest happiness was still something they strove for. Now it's totally out the window. Like, now they don't even care, and it's obvious, right? Like, Pressler cut maintenance budgets and killed people, but he still wanted guests to have a good time. Nowadays, they could care less if guests have a good time because they've already spent the money on their tickets in their hotel. That's even more short-sighted. So, that is my problem. I think what happens is that as time goes on, people aren't going to return. I mean, certainly anybody that goes now, that's not like a local or annual pass holder or whatever, anybody that spends, full price for a vacation to Disney right now is not going to come back until everything that they missed because of the pandemic has been restored. Right? So these people aren't going to come back in 2021 because I don't think everything's going to get back to normal by the end of 2021. So you have people that, are going now and they're not going to come back for several years. I think at the point at which, park capacity goes back to 100%, the parks aren't going to hit 100%. I mean, I'm expecting you're going to see levels in the 50% range. Like, probably not quite as bad as, the year or two after 9/11, but getting to the point where, there's still a lot of people that can't afford these trips, and they can't afford them, multiple years in a row. And they're going to look at the value, and they're going to be like, there's no value here. We came back, so Lindsay, my youngest daughter, the last time we went to Disney World, like a year and a half ago, she didn't really have a good time. She was kind of, I don't know, not too impressed. And so when we went last week, I was kind of expecting she wasn't going to be too happy. We got home, and she's like, that was fun. I want to go back. So she had a good time. And I'm like, we could go back to Florida if you want. Do you want to go back to Disney, or do you want to go somewhere else? She's like, I'd like to go to SeaWorld because I've never been there. So, I mean, there's a guest that had a good time at Disney, but they're not, like, aching to go back a second time because there were a lot of things like fireworks and parades that she didn't get to see. There were a lot of things missing from this trip. And, I mean, that's just her not even knowing how much money it cost, right? Like, that's just her... I mean, the thing that was new, she rode the Skyliner for the first time. She rode Rise, Millennium Falcon, and Runaway Railway. Those were the new things for her this trip. She loved the Skyliner. She loved Millennium Falcon. She liked Rise. I think she liked Millennium Falcon better than Rise, to be completely honest, because I let her be pilot. Both times we rode Millennium Falcon, and she loved it. I think she liked it better than Rise. And then she hated Runaway Railway. Without me even prompting, she said the Great Movie Ride was better as soon as we got off. She said the Great Movie Ride was better. I want Chubby merchandise. And I said, well, I agree with you on one of those, and the other one is against my religion. But so I told her, I said, next time we can go to Florida, we can absolutely go to SeaWorld. I said, we'll get the vaccine first. I won't go to SeaWorld without having the vaccine. But I said, we can absolutely go to SeaWorld. That's great. I haven't been to SeaWorld in a long time. I want to say Lindsay was probably like 1 or 2, so it was probably like 10 years ago we were at SeaWorld last.
That was going to be my question. Like, what age range is your daughter in, so that we could like gauge what level of opinion this is at?
Lindsay's 12. Lindsay's 12.
Okay.
So but so she doesn't remember SeaWorld the last time we took her to SeaWorld. So she's essentially never been to SeaWorld. Um,
they're
I mean,
playing
she
with
had a
Disneyland.
fun time at Disney, but it wasn't amazing enough to her that she wants to go back. And I think that's one thing coming from a 12-year-old kid that doesn't have to worry about how much the experience costs. But when you get that response, from a kid, what's going to make the parents want to, come up with several $1,000s to go again? They're not. If their kid doesn't want to go, they're not going to go. I mean, even as far as 2 years ago, she'd still rather go on a cruise than go to Disney World.
And these
But
are,
that,
maybe they'll go back to Disney, but it won't be the focus of their trip. They'll go back to Orlando to also go see Harry Potter or Mario whenever that opens in Orlando, or to go to
she wants to
SeaWorld,
go.
or on the way to a cruise. Disney World will
Yeah,
not be the focus of the vacation the second time around. They won't
it
stay at
won't.
a Disney hotel. They
No.
won't spend all 7 days on property. They'll do the Magic Kingdom and
Yep.
whatever park has the newest ride, and then probably move on and do something else.
They'll do Epcot because I'll make them. But yeah, um,
Well, I'm
and that's
talking
very
about other
true. And the
families.
problem,
I'm talking about just families in general. Like your family in
no,
general, if they're going to
not
do
my
2 days
family.
at Disney
Okay.
World, they do the
Yeah.
Magic Kingdom and then whatever other park has the newest rides.
Yeah, you're right. And I think the problem is that the popularity of Walt Disney World, basically since 2010-ish, since the end of the last recession, has been driven in large part by people who love it and want to go back. And they go back rather frequently. I think that demographic is going to disappear. If it hasn't
We all
already,
know, even in
it's
our
going to
little
disappear.
community, like we all know people who aren't like huge Disney fans, but they still have the annual or biannual tradition. Like they go to Disney World every year, every other year, and they just go back because they have fun, not because they're super fans or anything like that.
Right, but if one of their trips was this year and they spent the same amount of money they spent last year and got half of the experience, that's going to have an impact on them. And if it means that they're not going to come back until all of those experiences are back, then absolutely, that's going to delay their return to Disney World. I mean,
Hmm.
if like I said, my daughter wants to go to SeaWorld, I'm fine with that. I probably wouldn't take them, even if I wasn't, you know, a super fan. If I was a regular person, I wouldn't take them back and pay money for park tickets and hotels until we at least got fireworks back. I mean, that's kind of like, if they can do castle projections, why can't they do fireworks? And they're just not, and that's just being cheap, and I kind of resent it. So
We've had this discussion
that's
about
kind of
why
where
they
I'm
can't
at.
do fireworks right
Yeah,
now.
I know. I want to address a couple things in the chat, because somebody in the chat is asking me if I've been to Hershey Park, because that's about an hour and a half from where I live, and I have been to Hershey Park. I haven't been to Hershey Park this year, but I was there last year. It's fun. I like Hershey Park. It's a fun little. I mean, it's a pretty big park. It's got a lot of stuff to do. Um, they have a whole water park now. So yeah, I like Hershey Park. I think it's good.
Yeah, it fills up. It fills up the
I
day
haven't.
pretty quickly. I mean, we go there,
It
or we
does.
went
No,
there
you can.
about once a year. So, not that we haven't gone this year. So I don't
Yeah,
know what. I don't even know if they're open, honestly. So, but
Jason,
they
when
were
I when I
open
come
over
to
the summer.
Pennsylvania, because I know at some point I'll be in Pennsylvania in the next couple of years. When I come to Pennsylvania, let's go to Hershey Park because I kind of want to do that. That sounds fun.
I'll take you to Hershey Park, but I will also take you to Knoebels.
What's Knoebels? Is
Because
that another
Knoebels
theme
is
park?
better. It's a small amusement park that has
Okay.
rides that don't exist anywhere else in the world.
Okay,
and they work.
we'll go.
So just for contrast, here's an interesting contrast. Knoebels built a ride that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. It used to exist in like the 20s. And they built a ride based on pictures of this attraction that used to exist in the 20s. They built it. And they couldn't get it to work. They worked on it for like 4 years before it opened to the public. A lot of the problems they ran into were related to safety restrictions that didn't exist in the 20s, so they had to accommodate them in today's day and age with a ride, a ride concept from a century ago. But it's a really fun ride, and it's really cool because it's something that you can go on that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. So yeah, I will take you there. I'll take you to Hershey, and I mean Hershey and Knoebels aren't that far apart. So I'll take you to Hershey, and then we'll stay overnight somewhere, and then we'll go to Knoebels the next day.
Okay. So, and I want to go, but I want to kind of veer back towards Disney now. I was talking to my best friend, he's another Disney super fan, and he went to Disney World in February, right before all this started, because he wanted to see Galaxy's Edge and stuff like that. Like he'd already seen it in Anaheim, but he wanted to do it again. So he went to Disney World, and even before all this started, he told me when he came back, he's like, Spencer, I don't know if I want to go back to Disney World again for a while. And this is before COVID. His favorite, he loves Disneyland more than Tokyo Disneyland. Don't ask me why. It's a long explanation. But he's like, if I go back to the U.S., I'm going to go to Disneyland again. I'd rather go to Disneyland than go to Disney World. And I haven't been to Disneyland since I was 3, so I can't speak on that. But
I mean, I will tell you, 2 years ago when Disney still had Paint the Night and World of Color, that was the place to go. I mean, Magic Kingdom has Happily, which I don't really care for very much. I know a lot of people like it. I kind of don't. Rivers of Light was horrible, and Illuminations was great. Now that since they got rid of Illuminations, you've got Epcot Forever, which is horrible. Disneyland with only 2 parks had better nighttime entertainment than Walt Disney World did.
So did we, and so did really everyone.
So did everyone. That's right.
But he's like, Hollywood Studios isn't a good park. Epcot is sad and weird, and I miss Illuminations. Yeah. The Magic Kingdom just keeps getting copycats, and everything they're putting in, I can go see somewhere else. I can go to Paris and see Ratatouille. I can go to Disneyland and see Galaxy's Edge. I can go to Shanghai and ride Seven Dwarfs Mine Train.
The Magic Kingdom
and
doesn't have
everything else,
the best versions of any of those.
And at the Magic, we have the same footprint for Small World as the Magic Kingdom, but we redid ours 3 years ago. We have the same mansion. It's just in Japanese. We have Country Bears. Everything special about the Magic Kingdom is also here or somewhere else. And he's like, I would rather go to Disneyland or to Paris or to Shanghai than go back to Walt Disney World. And the only reason that he said he wants to go back to Disney World again is to see Pandora. That's the only reason. He loves Flight of Passage and Navi River Journey.
Because that's the only thing that's unique. Yeah, no, I totally get it. Like, I go to Walt Disney World and the Magic Kingdom is the most visited park on Earth. I don't go to it.
Debatable.
I don't go to it. First of all, it's a hassle to get to. But I don't go to it that much because it doesn't have any compelling attractions, right? Like you've got the Pirates isn't even the second best version of Pirates. Mansion isn't the best version of Mansion. Small World isn't the best version of Small World. They have a copycat mine train in Shanghai. Shanghai has Tron, which isn't going to open here for like 2 years yet.
Paris has a better
Paris has
space.
the best fantasy land. I don't like space in Paris, but I'm not big on space in Florida either. Honestly, I like Disneyland space the best. But Paris has a better fantasy land, period. You know, depending on what you like in Tomorrowland. I mean, the only other thing that I liked in Tomorrowland that wasn't a copy somewhere else is the People Mover and Monsters Inc. And I mean, you got Carousel
And the Carousel of
but,
Progress. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, but those are the things that I would go on when I go. You know, I would go to the Magic Kingdom. I would go on Carousel of Progress. I would go on People Mover. I would go on Monsters Inc. when it was open. And then I would go on a couple of other random things. Like if I could get a fast pass for Mine Train, I'd do it because it's fun. You know, if Mansion was a 10-minute wait or less, I'd do it. I would do Splash. I think we've got, you know, tied with Tokyo for the best version of Splash. But, you know, it's kind of like there's not a lot that's compelling.
It's an
I
interesting.
totally understand.
It's an interesting question because it's weird to me that Florida, the experience of Florida in Orlando, is almost less accessible than a resort like Disneyland. Or, you know, I haven't been to Tokyo, so you could tell me what you think, Spencer. But I think probably getting around the Tokyo parks, you know, once you're in the Disney parks, getting between the parks, traveling to the park initially, and then once you're there, is almost easier than it is in Florida.
It's so easy in
Disneyland and
Tokyo,
Disneyland.
yeah.
Well, Disneyland and Disneyland Paris, because the parks are literally across from each other, are by far the easiest to get between. But in Tokyo, you just sit on the monorail for 5 minutes, and then you're at Disney Sea. And then at Disney World, you have to take a 20, 30-minute bus ride to get between any park that isn't Magic Kingdom and Epcot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
And
you're right, David.
And even
I almost
ease
one
of
of the cases
access.
where the size of
Sorry,
Florida
just
is
real quick.
actually working to get. Go ahead, Spencer. Sorry.
Just really quickly, ease of access too, because Disneyland is in the middle of LA. Tokyo is 15 minutes from the literal center of the city. Paris is 30 minutes out? I've never been to Paris, so I don't know how far it is.
Paris is about 30 to 40 minutes on a train. But
yeah,
so
Hong
here's the thing.
Kong is 25, 30 minutes, and Shanghai is right there in the middle of the city. And then Disney World is 30 minutes out of Orlando plus traffic on I-4, and then you have to get to your parking lot. And then once you get to the Magic Kingdom parking lot, you have to park, walk to the TTC, wait for the monorail, get across the lagoon. It's such a pain.
It is.
I don't
David,
think
that's a really interesting.
Yeah, I don't think the citizens of Anaheim will appreciate you saying it's in the middle of LA, but that's a Southern California thing.
It's a giant. It's all.
So, David, I think what you point out is absolutely right. Like Paris is super easy to get to from anywhere in Paris. You just get on the train, and the train station is literally at the front gates. It's about the same as Tokyo in terms of the train station and how far it is from the front gate of the parks. I think what you're essentially getting at is that Walt Disney World's master plan was a failure. The master plan of Walt Disney World, Disney was huge on transportation efficiencies and new modes of transportation, and that didn't really pan out in Florida. It did if you want to get from the Magic Kingdom to Epcot, but that's pretty much as far as it went.
If they had kept expanding the monorail system and created certain hubs for these different resort areas, then it would have worked.
Or have a different system, or have a different effective and efficient mass transit system.
Honestly, even the Disney Skyliner is reasonably effective. It just has trouble with weather because Florida has eclectic weather.
The biggest problem with Skyliner isn't honestly weather. The biggest problem with Skyliner is just capacity. It's just not built to. It's not built to handle the capacity that it should have been. But yeah, you're absolutely right, David. That is a failure of the of execution on the master plan as far as transportation goes at Walt Disney World. You're 100% correct with that.
So, and the reason I bring that up is to say that if you're not putting things in the parks that are compelling people to go there, and you're offering a worse experience outside the parks to get to them, then you're really negating any of the attraction that your 42 square miles are giving you. So therefore, they failed on both counts. They failed to create and maintain the transportation system and the infrastructure required to make it a special event to go there. And they're not creating
Destination,
attractions
yeah.
and experiences within the park to make it worth any extra effort that you have to put forth to get there.
Right. You're right. Yeah. I mean, and like Spencer said, Pandora is probably the thing that is still drawing people to Walt Disney World because
That's
it's the
the only
newest.
reason I want to go to Disney World. Like, I want to go to Disney World because I know people in Florida and I want to meet them. But also, I want to go to Pandora. I can go to Galaxy's Edge in California, and it's almost it's 2/3 the flight time. It is, but I can only see Pandora in Orlando. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Pandora is the draw for Orlando. Pretty much has been since it opened. But yeah, there's a lot of things about Walt Disney World not to like. I mean, if you're a family and you've never been and you want to go on vacation for a week, you can certainly go for a week and have fun. But there's a lot of things that people that go frequently don't like about it. And yeah, transportation is absolutely one of them. I mean, people have been complaining about the buses since 1989 practically. So, all
and
right, let's
I was trying to just really quickly. I was trying to price my going to Orlando next year because I was going to do it this year, and obviously things have changed with how prices are going. And I was just thinking about it. I'm like, I'm going to fly 14, 15, 16 hours across the entire planet to go to Florida. And, I'm going to meet people and I'm going to want to do Pandora, and everything else I'll just do because it's there. I don't want to see Epcot
yeah.
forever, but I'll see it because it's there. I don't really want to ride
I mean, it might not be
Make
there.
the Minis Runaway Railway, but I'll do it because it's there. I don't feel a pressing need to go to Orlando except to meet all the people I've been working with for 2 years and to ride Flight of Passage. I mean, that's really it.
So, let's see. George in the chat says monorail travel is worse than buses, IMO. I'd agree with you as far as Walt Disney World goes, but if you've taken the monorail in Japan, you wouldn't think that.
That's true.
It's just because the
But that's
Walt
because
Disney
our
World
monorail is
system
properly
is a piece of
scheduled and
junk.
is reliable, and
Yeah,
ours is actually running on a
and
schedule, and it's
works.
clean and reliable and
Yep.
pretty.
It's not a 35-year-old piece of junk that's 15 years past its lifetime. But anyway, all right. I want to switch topics because we've got like 15 minutes left, and well, we talked about budgets. I was going to go on a rant about Disney trying to basically scam their cast members by offering a year's subscription to Disney Plus instead of a main gate pass, which I think is absurd. And I bet there are cast members that hate going to the parks because they work there. I mean, like, if you know people, like, I'm sure there's people that, like, work at McDonald's that hate going to McDonald's, right? So that's fine. I'm sure there's cast members that hate going to the parks because they work there. Maybe there's cast members that don't go to the parks because they know what happens there. Like maybe they work in food services at Pecos Bills and they're like, I would never eat quick service at Walt Disney World. I don't know. So I'm sure there's some people that would definitely take the Disney Plus, but I think Disney offering them Disney Plus instead of park admission, I mean, it's like a $600 value for parking, like an annual pass, versus like $150 for Disney Plus. Um, that's kind of absurd. And I mean, you work for the biggest entertainment company in the world. Shouldn't you just get free Disney Plus? I mean, it's like $8 a month. Shouldn't you just
Yes,
get it for
exactly.
free? Why wouldn't they just give it to you for free? Like, you should get free admission to the parks. That makes sense, right? Um,
Yeah,
he's
I mean,
he's
I put it this
you
way:
get
I worked at Starbucks, which doesn't even have a divested business anywhere near the level of Disney, but I got free drinks and I got free Spotify, even though we don't own Spotify. Like, these are things that aren't that expensive to give away, especially with the
yeah.
insane
Disney
profit
Plus
margins
doesn't
they're
cost
running right now.
anything.
Yeah,
Absolutely. So
Disney Plus has approximately 73 million subscribers, right? You're telling me that
Yeah,
adding 100,000 for free is really going to make that big of a difference in any numbers? It
it's
boggles my
not.
mind that that is not a standard, you know, benefit of working for the Disney company.
Yeah,
chat
absolutely,
says Disney Plus
absolutely.
is $79 a year, and that's pennies to the Disney company, even for 100,000 employees.
Yeah. I mean, I would kind of be offended that you don't get Disney Plus for free, as an employee.
But
I mean, it's kind of
didn't they
absurd.
do this? They did this last year, didn't they? Where they offered cast members the
They
choice of
did.
Main Gate or Disney
They
Plus.
did.
Uh,
And like I
and
said, I'm sure there's cast members that don't like. There's cast members that don't use their main gate. I'm sure. That's fine. Then take the Disney
yeah,
Plus. But
well,
but
that's what I
you
said
know
about
any
like Disney Store cast members who work in Nobody Cares
but
Mall. You know, take the Disney Plus instead of the
yeah.
Main Gate because you're never going to use it.
Well, I mean, but the other thing though is that you should just get both. Like, if you're a cast member that doesn't use your main gate, you're not costing the company any money, right? And if you're a cast member that works, 40 hours a week at Disney World and then another 20 hours a week somewhere else because they don't pay you enough money, you don't have time to watch Disney Plus. So it's like they're like nickel and diming their own employees, which is kind of offensive. But that's all I want to say about that. If you guys want to say anything else, go ahead.
Well, one of the people in the chat was asking you to go on the rant.
I
uh,
know that wasn't where I wanted to. I mean, that's not where I want to go on the rant tonight. It's just not. It's just stupid. Um,
it is. It seems cheap. It's something that they could just do, especially right now when everyone's at home uh, with nothing to do. You know, give them Disney Plus. Give them something to be happy about. You
well,
know.
no, I mean the
Uh,
people that are at home with nothing to do have been fired, so they're not employees, so they can't have Disney Plus anyway. They should have given them like 3 years of Disney Plus as their severance package. People wouldn't be pissed off at that.
I
But
guess.
anyway, all right. The next thing I want to talk about is another stupid thing that the Walt Disney Company did. Um, I have never, ever in my entire life canceled a trip after I did check in at the airline 24 hours in advance. Never. Until this weekend. Because I was flying to LA on Saturday and we were going to check into the Grand Californian, which was supposed to open today. We were going to check in first thing this morning to the Grand Californian because it reopened. And last night, no, Friday night at 5:30, they decided that they're not going to open the Grand Californian. So this was a day and a half after the new mandates came down from Newsom about the new restrictions when the ICU capacity gets under 15%, yada, yada, yada. It took Disney a day and a half to figure out that they weren't going to open. And that put it less than less than 24 hours before I was going to get on a plane to come to California. So, I don't know whether Iger's like still on Newsom's panel of business leaders in California or whatever.
He's not.
But even so, why did it take them a day and a half to figure out that, you're at the time that Newsom made that announcement, the ICU capacity in Southern California was 20.6%. Why did it take Disney a day and a half to figure out that pretty soon they're going to hit 15% and have to close? And if not, like, the day they open, which would have been today, it would have been, like, the next day. It took them a day and a half to figure that out and contact people who had reservations and tell them that they were not going to open on the 6th like they originally planned. That's just idiotic. And again, I attribute this to way too much bureaucracy in the company, because if the company was smaller, that decision could have been made almost instantaneously, right? Like, somebody somewhere had to realize when Newsom made that announcement, somebody somewhere in DVC had to realize, like, oh crap, this is going to mean that, like, people aren't going to come. We shouldn't even, like, get cast members here to prep the hotel to reopen because we're just going to have to close. Like, it doesn't take you a day and a half to figure out that that's what's going to happen. But it took them that long to make the decision and contact people, which that just, again, shows you the level of bureaucracy in this company. It's just too big of a company.
It is. It's also a vacuum in leadership. It's a leadership issue that they can't make decisions in a timely manner. They don't enable their people to make those decisions. They should have seen this coming from early November. I mean, it was no surprise that Southern California was steadily rising and was going to go exponential pretty quickly.
Yep.
So they should have had this as a contingency, knowing how Governor Newsom is. You know, that's not a surprise either. So yeah, not only they should have been ready for it as soon as he said something. The letters could have gone out right then.
Yep. Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I didn't get a phone
with
call
the Hong Kong thing.
I didn't get a phone call until Friday night at like 7:30.
The same thing just happened in Hong Kong. The chief executive, I think that's her name, of Hong Kong, announced the new business restrictions that included closing Disneyland again. And it took the resort, I think, a whole day to announce that they were closing. Because I kept looking for an announcement and it didn't come. So every time I looked on the news, and it was all over the news, they're like, oh, theme parks and karaoke places are going to have to close again. And the website still said, Hong Kong Disneyland is reopened for business. And it took them until the next, I think the afternoon of the next day, for them to finally say, okay, Hong Kong Disneyland's going to close again. And I'm not sure if that's just they weren't expecting these things or it's a bureaucracy thing.
They should have a
in California
plan in place. They should have.
They should,
like
and in
David said,
California,
it should be a pre-approved plan in place for when things like that happen. Like, they should know better. Now they should know better.
California.
Maybe not in March. Yeah, especially California.
Well, especially with California, because they keep changing things all the time in California. They should have these plans for, like, oh well, we're reopening Buena Vista Street, but let's set this aside here in case we have to close it again. And the same thing with the Grand California.
Yeah, and so
I don't understand why this wasn't anticipated.
Not only is the hotel not open, but now all of the restaurants are shut down. Like, you can't even eat outdoors. You can't even get a corn dog at Award Wieners because you walk around eating it without a mask. Like, why would people want to go there now? There's no point in going there now. Like,
Buena Vista Street's still open, isn't it?
It is, but the restaurants aren't, just the shops now. Because all restaurants are closed even ones that have outdoor dining. You can only do takeout and delivery now. And because I guess technically if you did a takeout of award wieners, you couldn't eat it there. Like you couldn't you couldn't get food and eat it on the sidewalk in front of a restaurant. That's like not technically takeout.
You'd
So,
you'd have to take it to your car or take it all the way home before you
or
could
your
eat it.
hotel room. That's right. Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah. So that's the absurdity of that whole situation. And I don't want to get into a political rant because California is you know, no matter what you think, California is a mess, one way or the other. And but
And I'd
Disney
also like to
should
not
have
have
been
to
able to
moderate
see
the
this
chat.
coming. Disney should have absolutely been able to see this coming and had a contingency plan in place to give people as much notice as possible. But for whatever reason, like David said, yeah, there's a leadership vacuum. There absolutely is. So anyway, I'm not. That's as much of a rant as I'm gonna go on with that. That was pretty much it. We covered everything. I had a backup thing of a big Epcot rant that we don't have time to go into today, but maybe next week.
Tune in next week to Pressing Issues for a guaranteed rant from Jason about Epcot. I know all of you love that, so
I mean, rant about Epcot. Yeah, I mean, people in chat are talking about California and this and that, and I mean, it's pretty clear from the leadership in California that they don't really care about people, and they don't care that they don't follow their own guidelines. I mean, it's pretty damning when you make a proclamation that says you can't have indoor dining, and the media catches you having a big expensive dinner at this luxury restaurant the next day without masks. It's just completely 100% hypocritical. And I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat, that's completely hypocritical, and I can't imagine that people like that get reelected. It doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, all right, yeah, Epcot rant maybe next week. Again, for those of you who weren't here at the beginning of the show, I just want to say the sign-up form is up for auditions for Pressing Issue panelists. So check WDWNT.com for the Pressing Issues post that went up a couple hours ago. There's a form in there to fill out for auditions. So if you want to come on and join Spencer and me and David and Ron and everybody else on Sunday nights as one of our panelists, please sign up. We're going to do auditions over the course of the next couple weeks. We may or may not have a show next weekend because I'll be on my way back from Florida. So depending on how
Chat
things
said that
go,
Chat said they kind of miss Ashley this week earlier.
yeah. Well, tell Ashley that. Ashley at WDWNT.com. Tell her you miss her.
Send her an email.
Yeah. But we'll start auditions this week. Continue into next week. Like I said, we may or may not have a show next Sunday. I'm not sure yet. Yeah, somebody in the chat said Max, which is Mr. Cheesy Pop, seemed to have gotten COVID after dining at Carthay. I don't know if it's Carthay, because I think it might have been Knott's Berry Farm, which is what a lot of people were saying too. So, in any case, so yeah, we'll do the auditions. If we don't have a show next week, we might just take our Christmas hiatus. if you didn't see the timekeeping segment and you're a fan of the timekeeping stuff, Ron and I had a great 2-hour discussion about the planning and construction of Epcot Center last Saturday morning as part of the marathon show. So you can go back and watch that. If it's not up there, it should be up soon. But that was really cool, and Ron had some really cool graphics and pictures that we put up for that segment. So that was a lot of fun. Let's see. I guess that's probably all the announcements I have at this point. You guys have anything you want to say before we close this one out?
No, it's good to be back with you guys.
If you missed Geekly Kingdom, it's on our new entertainment channel, which you can subscribe to at WDWNT.tv. Lots of our favorite programs over there, like Ride Rehab and the RPG, and of course Geekly Kingdom. We had a good show yesterday. We celebrated Jilly and Eric's birthday, and we talked Toy Story. And then not this Saturday, but the Saturday after this one, we're going to have our last show before the holiday break. So be sure to come and join us Saturday the 18th, I think, at 5 p.m.
Nope. Saturday's not the 18th.
Oh. Crap. I'll figure it out. Saturday the 19th at 5 p.m. Come and join us on the WDWNT Entertainment Channel.
Yeah. While you're here, before you sign off, hit the like button, please. Hit the subscribe button if you are not already subscribed. And then go over to WDWNT.tv and hit the subscribe button over there, too. So you get alerts for all of the quality entertainment featuring Spencer that comes out on our entertainment channel. If you can't get enough of Spencer, he lives over there now, for the most part. Again, thanks to everybody who watched our marathon show. Yeah, the Spencer channel. Thanks to everybody who watched our marathon show last weekend. Thanks to everyone who donated or bid in the auction. We made an amazing amount of money raised for the cast member pantry, and I'm sure that all the cast members appreciate it. Those of you who tried to buy one of the cast member shirts that we had that sold out like within hours, we are making another one, a new version of it. Again, that all the proceeds will go to the cast member pantry, so keep your eyes out for that. That'll be a post on the site once we get those shirts in stock. So yeah, there's all that going on. I will contact people about auditions. The first one should be scheduled for this Wednesday if we get people that are available. And I guess that's about it. I think that covers things. So,
great.
All right. On behalf of Ron and David and Spencer, thanks for watching. Thank you, and stay tuned for the next episode, whenever that might be. I guess that's it. All right. Good night, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Hi, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Have a good day, and a Merry Christmas.